It is officially Jaguars week here on Locked On Colts, and it can't possibly go as poorly as it did last time, right? I mean, well, either way, I'm joined by one of the best beat writers in the game to break down everything Colts Jags. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you, Colts fans, for tuning in and making us your number one listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. And they have a special offer to all my listeners. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. This is Zach Hicks, and I'm joined by the great Joel A. Erickson of IndyStar. You guys are familiar with my work over at horseshoehuddle.com, and if you guys know Joel's voice at all, it's probably from that Colts Cover 2 pod, which you guys didn't end up changing the name of that, right? Even though the Colts are more of a Cover 3 defense now.
Yeah, no, we didn't change it. Another friend of both of ours, Brent Fettig, gave me some good advice, which is everyone already knows it as this. Don't change it. And honestly, we've had enough issues with Apple and some of that stuff that like changing it could have been catastrophic for people listening to it.
That's true.
But also, the thing is, the Cover 2 sort of works no matter what, because we're two guys covering football.
Right.
Honestly, it's sort of making a comeback because Too High Safety is suddenly like, I almost wish Jim and I had switched it like at the beginning and just called it the Too High Podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So then it wasn't, so set on the Cover 2, but it still kind of works. It still kind of works.
Yeah, it's funny. The whole league is switching to this Cover 2 and Too High, except for the team that you cover and that you're covering with that podcast. Every other team. But, maybe John Fox is the mastermind behind it all. We're not going to dive into that. But today, guys, we are going to dive into the news and updates of the day. Plus, we're going to dive into this pivotal matchup with the Jaguars. And again, hopefully it goes a little better this week. But, man, we had a lot of news today. I actually had to push back some things that we were going to talk about in the first segment. So to kick it off, Nsekhe signing to the practice squad. And I think from the original report, I know you reported on it really early, and then that Schultz guy, Jordan Schultz, I think is his name, also reported on it. But it seems like the Colts are kind of set on promoting him to the roster within a couple weeks, right?
Yeah, that's my understanding, is that they're going to do it. They have some wiggle room on that, which Colts fans will know from the way they handled Chase McLaughlin for a while there. They can elevate him three times before putting him on the active. If they want to just put him on the active, I think the most likely thing to do is just they move Luke Tenuta down.
Right.
I think he's been inactive for every game. He's a 6th-round rookie. He was a developmental pickup anyway. Mm-hmm. So I think that's probably the most likely thing. Kind of an interesting move with Nsekhe. He's 36. I think that's the thing that jumps out at everybody right away.
Yep.
But also has extensive experience as a swing tackle. So Lord knows they need any help on the offensive line they can get. Like I'm willing to withhold judgment on that 36-year-old until we see him play.
Yeah, Ty Nsekhe, he's an interesting case because I remember when I was with Washington, I was covering him years ago. He was like a swing tackle starting guy. I think he's only ended up starting 17 career games. But he was with Washington, got a decent contract from the Bills back in, I think, 2019, but didn't really play too much. And then was most recently with the Cowboys. And I think he started his career in another league. I think it was like the Canadian Football League. AFL,
Arena.
That's what it was. Yeah, Arena Football League. Yeah, so
he did a little bit of arena football and a little bit of AF2. He's been in the Canadian League. He's a guy who's going to play. He wanted to play no matter where he was.
Yeah. That's the thing with him. He's 36, but I don't want to say he's a young 36. We always throw that kind of stuff out there, but he hasn't really been in the NFL as long as you would think a 36-year-old has been. So
I'm going to start introducing myself as a young 36.
There you go. Yeah, dude, I had these people on Twitter saying, like, what are we doing with this ancient guy or something? I'm like, man, there's a lot of 36-year-olds on here that are going to take offense to that. Like, I don't know if they're going to.
Yeah, we have some new guys on. We have some newer guys on the beat who are younger. And it's the first time that, like, Nate Atkins is 4 or 5 years younger than me. James Boyd's a lot younger than that. It's the first time that, like, I'm getting old-headed by younger guys on a beat. I don't know how I feel about that. Like,
you're gonna have to grow out a beard or something just so you really feel like the old buck. Like that's
my belief is that you can't consider yourself old until you're older than everyone in all the 4 major pro sports leagues.
Oh, okay. You're getting.
So I feel like I've got a little ways.
Well, Tom Brady's helping you out a little bit. He's giving you a really nice buffer.
There's always some, like, 42 or 43-year-old pitcher.
Yep.
Always.
Yep.
Now, I don't know, like, it just depends on whether or not I'm going to have somebody who's 45, 46, but there's always some pitcher who's like a lefty who's still 42 and going. So I think I've bought myself some time there.
Perfect. Another little news and notes thing that we got from today is Ashton Dulin, really, really good receiver for the Colts. He's honestly, to me, I would say he's been their 3rd best receiver this year. He is placed on IR. I think it was with the elbow injury or hip injury or something like that from this last game. I can't remember exactly what it was. But yeah, he's on IR. He's going to miss a minimum of 4 weeks. Defensive tackle Chris Williams was called up, but losing Ashton Dulin, even though he hasn't been special teams Ashton Dulin this year, that's a pretty big loss for this squad.
Yeah, I think there's been a kind of a groundswell among Colts fans and media. It's been hard to get your brain off the offensive line, but I know one of the things I was asked on the radio was, hey, should Ashton Dulin and Alec Pierce start getting more of Paris Campbell snaps? And I mean, my answer was yes.
Yeah.
Kind of unequivocally. And now he's out for at least 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. So that takes some of that out. One of the things I was thinking when this news came out was that we kind of missed it on Thursday. Because he wasn't a guy who went down, on camera, at least that I can remember. And it wasn't like Kwity Paye or Naheem Hines where it was very visible. He was just kind of out. And so I don't think we got as much attention. But, I mean, he's receiving yards so far. I mean, that's significant. He's averaging 14 yards per reception. That's a significant loss considering, how they replace him. And I wonder, does Mike Strawn get more run now? Do you do some of the stuff with Pierce? Because I don't know if Campbell's snaps are going to go down now.
No. Yeah.
With him out, and that's interesting to me. Is how do you kind of feel that? Because he's done some nice stuff. I really like some of the stuff he's done over the middle and on the slant game this season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, Ashton Dulin's been really good. I mean, he had that big game in week 2 with all the injuries. He kind of became wide receiver 1 that week. And then the last couple of weeks, he's seen his snaps drop to around 20%, but he's making a lot of plays on 3rd downs. And that's where the Colts are going to be missing him, where, it might only be 1 or 2 3rd down conversions a game, but those are 1 or 2 that you were getting. And you got to take everything that you can right now in this offense, but last little thing I want to talk about in this news and notes, we did have a little bit of Twitter drama with the Indianapolis Colts today. And that was with right tackle Dennis Kelly. Zach Kiefer, beat reporter for The Athletic, tweeted out something that said, like, why is Dennis Kelly not getting some playing time? And Dennis Kelly responded saying he doesn't know. I used the GIF, I think, from that HBO show. But he was like, that's what I'm asking. So Dennis Kelly, do you think the plan is to get him out there anytime soon, Joel?
I asked about Kelly on Friday, and Frank kind of said he didn't rule it out. First of all, he could have ruled it out and didn't rule it out. He kind of said that they were trying to work him in after the injury. He said, we're happy to have Dennis on our roster. He adds that veteran presence. We'll continue to evaluate that. That's the key sentence there as far as he didn't rule out Kelly making an appearance in the lineup. And then he said, as he was coming off of his injury in training camp, you can see him getting more and more physically comfortable. He had a procedure on his knee in training camp. And so I think that may have something to do with it. We haven't talked to Dennis Kelly. I actually made a note to when I go in the locker room tomorrow to try to grab him and see like what that meant. It's because like on its face, that's a pretty, stark thing to do there on Twitter. Sometimes whenever you confront players with that, they're like, oh no, it was a joke or whatever, but I would like to hear more from him on what he was thinking there. Cause I do think, especially the way Matt Pryor played on the right side last week, that it's a possibility. It has to be. I mean, they're trying stuff left and right now, trying to get this offensive line to look anything remotely close to average.
Yeah. If they want to keep Braden Smith at right guard, then you pretty much have to start Dennis Kelly at right tackle. So, yeah, I'm agreeing with you there. And, coming up, guys, we're going to talk more about this Colts offense, along with the kind of hole that they're in right now in the division. Now a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. It can be tough to train your brain to stay in problem-solving mode when faced with a challenge in life. But when you learn to find your own solutions, there's no better feeling. A therapist can help you become a better problem solver, make it easier to accomplish your goals no matter how big or small. Personally, guys, I have been to therapy a couple times in my life. It really has helped me in a lot of down moments. I know as a guy, it's kind of tough to get in that mindset where, you can go to therapy. It's something that you're really not taught to do when you're younger. But when it comes to therapy, BetterHelp is a great option. It's convenient, it's accessible, it's affordable, and entirely online. Get matched with a therapist right after filling out a brief survey and switch therapists at any time. When you want to be a better problem solver, therapy can help you get there. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. And thanks again, everybody, for making Locked On Colts your first listen every day. Make sure you check out NFL Key Predictions every Friday on Locked On NFL. Locked On's local experts give you the inside scoop on the 5 biggest games of the NFL weekend, including Sunday and Monday Night Football. Plus, betting advice from the field's leading experts, Bet Online. Follow NFL Key Predictions every Friday on Locked On NFL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Joel, let's talk about this offense a little bit. Because again, this whole podcast, this whole week has been about the offensive line, about the Colts offense, but DVOA, Football Outsiders from DVOA released their weekly ranking of where the Colts are and where all the other teams are. And just to show how bad this offense is right now. Oh, we got a guest star coming on right now. Yeah. You guys are on YouTube. We got a little guest star there in the corner there.
My son's poking his head on right here. And now he's hiding.
I get it. But Football Outsiders with DVOA, they put the Colts or whatever as the worst offense in football. And it was so bad that the Colts were 32nd in offense, 11th in defense, 18th in special teams, but were the 32nd overall team in the whole league because their offense was rated so terribly. So, Joel, what are you seeing from this offense, and what's kind of the vibe in the locker room with the coaches and the players when you're kind of talking to these guys with how dreadful this offense has really been?
Well, I think starting with Reich, Frank is generally pretty good at trying to keep an even keel. I think it's why they're probably 2-2-1 instead of worse than that record-wise. Mm-hmm. But I think having been around him for 5 years now, I think you can see the stress on him a little bit when he's talking about this, because it's not they're struggling with things on offense that we've never seen him struggle with. And that's got to gnaw at him. I do feel like some of the personnel changes you've seen the last couple of weeks are an indicator of that too. Yeah. As far as the rest of the team goes, it's sort of like a microcosm of what happens when you end up talking about this team, where like no matter what, it ends up coming back to the offensive line. And in the locker room, like especially after the game the other night, like the receivers were in there. If you read my story on Alec Pierce, like Paris Campbell and Michael Pittman were in there cutting up about Pierce because they were so excited about what he'd just done, and the week before that, the tight ends, it was kind of like that. Like everyone else, with the exception of, I think Matt Ryan's getting a lot of tough questions right now. And he's kind of handling it unflappably. It's hard to tell with him. He's a lot of quarterbacks who've been around for a long time are like this. They're good at hiding what their true thoughts are. But in terms of like the receivers, the running backs, the tight ends, there's optimism and belief there, and there's reason to. You can see why. Whereas I think like Quentin Nelson has been very frustrated and self-frustrated, not angry at us, that kind of thing. I know that some of the tackles, it's been they've been honest about where their confidence is, and it's not great at times, what they're thinking about. And that's just sort of a reflection, I think, of what we're seeing on the field. It's you and I were talking about this, like you try to come up with other reasons or explanations, but inevitably everything keeps coming back to the offensive line. This offense is 32nd in DVOA because the offensive line would be, if you could had just an offensive line DVOA, they'd be like 45th,
Right.
like there'd be backup, there'd be backup groups that would be ahead of them, So I do think that's been sort of reflected in what we've seen in the locker room, even after games. Like I know Quentin Nelson the other day was like, that was disgusting. In a locker room that was honestly pretty positive because they won. Defense played well, Pierce played well. There's a lot of reasons to think, if you're a Colts player who's not in the offensive line, there's a lot of reasons to think, hey, this is right around the corner.
Yeah.
But it all keeps coming back down to, can they block somebody? And the answer has been no so far.
Yeah, and just to throw some more numbers with that, again, the Colts have only scored 69 points through 5 games. I believe that comes out to like less than 13 points a game. By far, in a way, the worst start that we've seen from not only the Frank Reich Colts, but honestly, I would say the Chris Ballard Colts. Even the 2017 offense and that monstrosity that it was never this bad to start a season. To at any point in the season, like they're not really scoring. They're moving the ball a little bit, but they're just not getting in the end zone, and they're not finding success. And a lot of that is, again, Matt Ryan's being sacked at a crazy number. He's fumbling at a crazy number. He's throwing a crazy number of picks. It's just kind of a mess on offense.
I actually have an offensive question for you.
Okay.
I have a hypothesis, and it's kind of bigger than the Colts. But do you think defenses are getting better at taking away quick game around the league?
It's kind of funny. If you look at the rise of too high safety, it's actually teams are getting better at taking away the deep ball this year.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you look at Josh Allen, for instance, the way that like his targets down to his ADOT, his average depth of target has dropped significantly this year. You're seeing this across the NFL. And I think that's why we're seeing, for instance, this Colts defense, even though they are running that single high and they are taking, it's more susceptible to deep shots in this defense than it is against a too high. The Colts are having success against those deep passing games where the quick passing games are hurting them, just like across the league right now. So it is kind of weird that the Colts are struggling with that quick passing game. I know that was a big question that you asked Reich in his presser. I think teams are trying to sit on the underneath ball, and then they're having the two deep safeties kind of take away everything over the top. But I do think with the rise of too high safety, with the rise of quarters and the Fangio style, it's actually kind of encouraging the quick game, and it's kind of going that Matt Eberflus way of you can move the ball on us, but it's going to take you 16 plays to score, and you're making offenses just be perfect. Which an offense like the Colts is not going to be perfect all the way down the field. The second they cross the 50, they're not going to be even good. So
and I think
that's what it is.
Colts' lack of protection. I think the Colts' lack of protection plays into it, where you can have those guys. The guys near the line of scrimmage, you can have them take away the short stuff because the payoff for you is going to be a sack. Right. Whereas you try to do it against somebody else, it's less likely to work. I was just thinking about it because the Chiefs, it seems like the way to play the Chiefs is to take away the quick game and try to get them into a runaround type of thing, because that was the adjustment they made last year when they weren't getting the deep shots as much. And if you're on YouTube, we've got a full on, like, he's just going to sit on my lap now.
You're on dad duty right now, so they're all just jumping around.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just interesting. I think with the Colts, it's just, if I was a defensive coordinator, I'd be saying, hey, we're going to press the line of scrimmage and take away any quick throw, because if all we have to do is buy like a half a second and we're good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing with the Colts too, is at least with Carson Wentz last year, I'm not even trying to say that I want to go back to the Carson Wentz Colts by any means, but Carson Wentz,
with this line would be really bad.
Oh, he'd be
Really
terrible. He'd be an absolute train wreck. We are kind of seeing a little bit of that with Washington because their offensive line's struggling too. But at least with Carson Wentz, if you brought everybody up and blitzed, Wentz could break through that pressure and he could maybe find a guy down the field. The thing with Matt Ryan is he's not breaking through contact in the backfield because he's just not that kind of athlete. He's not that kind of quarterback. And he really doesn't have like the arm strength to throw it when he's off balance, throw it when there's pressure in his face and still make an accurate pass. So it's harder to blitz and play up on guys like Pat Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen, and not even just those top guys. I mean, even we're talking like a Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr, because those guys have a little bit more live arms and a little bit more athletic. Where Matt Ryan, all that's kind of a struggle for him at this point in his career. So you really need your protection to hold up, which the Colts really aren't having whatsoever. Again, he was pressured, I think, on 50% of his dropbacks on Thursday.
He did a little bit better job on Thursday of stepping up and navigating, which is kind of what you always hear people talk about the older quarterbacks doing. But the problem with that is that they haven't, like, it would be one thing if it was just two guys coming off the edge and the three guys inside were winning, but they're not winning enough inside to give him a pocket to step into. So you get some good plays out of that. Like there were some, Marcus Brady was talking about one today where he stepped up and kind of flipped it back to Pierce across his body. It was an unbelievable throw, and it was. But there were other plays where he did that and it ended up going badly for them.
Right.
So it's funny. Like even when we're talking about this stuff, it all ends up coming back to the offensive line again.
Right. Now, the last thing I'll say about that is I really think the game plan going into Thursday and why they made that big change was they wanted to give him a lane to step up. They knew the tackles were going to be a struggle on Thursday, but they didn't expect Ryan Kelly to struggle when he was out there. And then Danny Pinter played a little bit better, but it still wasn't great. Quentin Nelson had his struggles. Braden Smith was probably their best lineman, but he struggled. They expected, those three to at least hold their own. And then the outside guys, if they struggled, Ryan could step up. But again, it was just a complete disaster. So that's the way to describe this Colts offensive line this year. Just a complete disaster. But coming up, guys, we're going to talk about this Jaguars matchup, talk about Colts Jags, and hopefully that this could be a little bit better. But first, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Bet Online. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all of the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game that you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information, with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and even golf. Colts are currently 2-point favorites against the Jaguars on BetOnline. Do you want to take that? I leave that completely up to you guys. I'm not giving you any betting advice. Just bet at your own will on BetOnline. So head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Joel. Jaguars week. How are we feeling going into this one compared to last one?
I don't know how to feel about any game at all right now. I didn't feel great about Denver, and I was generally right because I was like, that's a pretty good defense, especially against the pass, and the Colts aren't running it, and they only scored 12 points. But then again, Denver is also terrible on offense, and they ended up winning the game. I didn't feel great about Kansas City, and it's the thing with Jacksonville too is that there's clearly some curse in Jacksonville that makes them play awful down there. Like everything just falls apart down there. Where we've seen them, have that happen and then play. I don't feel like they've ever had an easy time with Jacksonville the last couple of years.
One time. 2019 was the one time that Jonathan Williams game was the only time.
Oh, of course it was 2019.
Yep.
But they generally play better when they're at home against them. So it's just everything is so hard with this team right now because to project them playing much better, I have to project that the offensive line is going to play much better. We just haven't seen any of it, But I think what we've seen from the Jaguars the last couple of weeks, I'm expecting the Colts defense to play better against them.
Yes. Yes, that was the thing. Trevor Lawrence kind of had his way with the Colts defense last time, and they really didn't have to do much, obviously, in that second half because the Colts offense wasn't doing anything whatsoever. But the Jaguars are coming off a pretty bad loss against the Texans. I think they only scored 6 points in that game. It was a really ugly game if you watched. And something really interesting was the Texans, I think they ran 2 high safeties like on 96% of the snaps in that one. Like that's how they boggled down Trevor Lawrence. And now the Colts are going to come and look, I love Gus Bradley. I think he's done a great job this year. He's going to run a majority of single high. That's just what he does. Even if the scouting report says only run 2 high, he's still going to run a lot of single high, even against the Chiefs. You know, they mixed in a lot of coverages, but it was a lot of single high. But yeah, like you said, the Colts are kind of getting the Jaguars at their worst, where in week 2, they were kind of getting them kind of rearing up a little bit. So, you know, the Colts could bounce back here, but again, I hate to bring the conversation back to this. It just all comes down to the offensive line. That's what it all is, you know? Like, I don't know. What do you think the Colts need to do outside of the offensive line to get the win against the Jaguars this time?
Well, I think one of the things is Trevor Lawrence is not actually averaging many yards per attempt this season. He's at 6.8. That's not great. I mean, and, you know, part of the problem in that first game was that they were just giving him so many easy throws underneath. We asked Bradley a ton of questions about stopping quick game after that one. I think that they've got to take that away. Take away the easy throw from him. Maybe a little bit of what they did in week 3, where they made Mahomes hold on to it a little bit more and scramble around and then actually played really well in the back end for a long time. I think maybe they need to do that a little bit. Just going off of the first matchup and how many of those throws were – that was one where I went back and watched it again, and I was like, I feel like the pass rush is actually better than I realized it was. He just got the ball out of his hands so fast. Mm-hmm. And one thing that's going to help him, though, is I'm assuming DeForest Buckner is, you know, at least at the level of strength he was at against Denver. He wasn't the same guy in that first game in Jacksonville because of a hip. So that's going to help the defense a lot too. I feel like in the 2 games they've won, he's been unbelievable on defense, just borderline unblockable. And you kind of see with him when he's good to go, how important he is to that defense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the Colts, you know, I think their defense is in a better place coming into this game. You know, Rodney McLeod is now their starter as strong safety, and we've seen the impact that he has had. The second that he stepped in there as a starter, that defense started to click. I think Zaire Franklin and Bobby Okereke are both in a much more comfortable spot right now with this defense than where they were early in the season. I mean, both of them are playing at a very high level for how, you know, again, I was talking with coaches before the season. It is so difficult to make that change from a spot dropping like cover 2 defense to man match cover 3 defense. It's a completely different position that these guys are playing. And, you know, 5 weeks in, they're both looking pretty good. So the Colts defense, I'm feeling pretty good going into this. It's just, again, that offense. And I do think that the Jaguars defense is a tough matchup for them because they have so many guys that they throw at you in the pass rush. They have so many different fronts that they come at you with. You know, Trayvon Walker will be standing up over the center one snap. He'll be out in a wide 9 the next. They'll have Devin Lloyd coming off the edge in one snap. This Colts offensive line is in for some trouble, I think, with this Jaguars defense. But again, you can't do much worse than what they did last time. So I think that's all we have for today, guys. I appreciate you jumping on, Joel, and also, you know, your son's jumping on too. I'm assuming they had fun on the show.
I know we got Spencer and Nsekhe, and my dog was trying to make an appearance too, but he's just not tall enough.
we got dad Joel A. Erickson today is what we got on the show. So it was a pleasure having you, man. If you guys are interested in Joel's work, follow him on Twitter at Joel A. Erickson, correct? Right? Yep, at Joel A. Erickson, at ZachHicks2 for me on Twitter, and then at Locked On Colts. Also, subscribe to our shows on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. And thanks again, guys, for making Locked On Colts your first listen every day. Now make your second listen to Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you the expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next week.